Hello everyone, welcome back to my Railway Series research videos. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? The topic of today's research project is Toad. This amiable brake van only appeared in 2 Railway Series books, but stands in high regard with fans. Toad is based upon one of the brake vans built initially by the Great Western Railway, and then with further examples added by British Railways after 1949. Over 3,000 Toad brake vans were built, but there are some subtle and some not so subtle differences between the various designs of brake van, so we can more accurately say which one Toad is. We know that Toad escaped from the West Country with Oliver and Isabel to the island of Sodor in the 1960s, and my plan is that when I bring together all 3 of their research projects, we'll have a more accurate picture of their real numbers and backstories. I'll also have further research projects on their pals on the Little Western Branch line, Duck, Alice and Mirabelle and Dulcie. I hope to have all the Little Western research out by the end of this year. It's interesting to note that all of Wilbur Awdry's characters named after animals are based on designs from the Great Western or Western region in Duck, Bear and Toad, and the latter 2 were introduced in the same book, the Railway Series number 23 Enterprising Engines. We know Duck is named after Duck, as the Reverend's model originally had a waddle when it ran, and Bear is called Bear as his engine had a distinctive growl. But why is Toad called Toad? The Great Western Railway used various telegraphic codes for their rolling stock, and using some Thomas characters for examples, the word siphon was used for their milk wagons and gnat for their slip coaches. The word Toad was used for the Great Western goods brake vans, and it seems Wilbur was happy to reuse this cheerful and appropriate name for the brake van rescued with Oliver and Isabel. It no doubt gave him, as well as parents and railway fans who read the books, a good chuckle. Way back in 2019, I put out a thread on Twitter with most of this research, so this may be familiar to some, and I believe it's also made its way onto the wiki. I'm happy now to commit the explanation to video where I can go through all the evidence more thoroughly. A link to the Twitter thread is in the video description if you fancy reading it. As Toad only appeared in 2 Railway Series volumes, and only 4 stories therein, there are very few illustrations of him. Luckily, there is enough detail in the 4 close-up illustrations we have of Toad to narrow down his basis. There were 23 different diagrams of Great Western brake vans which we have to work through, and one final diagram built in 1949 after nationalisation. These diagrams are labelled AA and then a number from 1 to 24, and from the outset some of these can be disregarded from obvious physical features not shared with Toad in the illustrations. First of all, we can disregard the AA ones as they had 6 wheels. Toad only has 4 as seen here. AA4 vans were built for working in the long Severn Tunnel, and an enclosed veranda to protect the guard from the smoke and fumes in the tunnel was added. Toad has an open veranda. AA5 was a ballast plough and brake van design. Toad does not have the ballast equipment. AA6s were permanent wave vans with enclosed verandas. AA7s were vans built with a shorter wheelbase for use on metropolitan lines. Toad is too long to be these, and they would not have been found in the West Country. AA8 was a group of special low vans for the restricted clearances on the Pont Newydd branch in Wales, which had a low central compartment and a veranda on each end. The AA9 design was another type of enclosed permanent way brake van similar to the AA6 but heavier. The AA10s were another example of ballast plough van, but again a heavier example. AA12 was another type of permanent way brake van design. And again, the AA14 was another permanent way brake design. Only one of the entire lot was built, however, due to the war. The AA16s were a loose bunch of early outside frame vans with wooden bodies, which were mostly gone from Great Western stock by the 1940s. Toad is one of the younger examples of brake van, so all of these can be disregarded. AA17 was a design also for the Severn Tunnel, so would have had the enclosed verandas. The final Great Western design in this list is the AA22. This was another van for the Severn Tunnel, the final one built. And lastly, AA24 is another double veranda design for the Pont Newydd branch, but these were built by the Western region of British Railways rather than the Great Western. Okay, so after that rather long rundown, let's have a look at the remaining similar looking diagrams which are still possible as being Toad. The AA2, 3, 11, 13, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21 and 23. There are further details which can help place Toad's basis. In this illustration, we can see his chimney is off-centre, a feature not present on the AA2, 3 and AA11 designs. His cabin window suggests he is not an AA13, as they are the developed single pane rather than the older style 2 pane. However, these were updated over time on the older vans, so it is not conclusive. What is conclusive, however, is the style of axle box, which was not present on the AA13s. Looking at his cab railing, these rule out the AA23s, as the rails have joins instead of brackets. Many of these were also built after the Great Western was absorbed into British Railways, and reading between the lines explicitly mentions that Toad is a Great Western brake van. Toad is vacuum fitted, and the AA18 and AA19 diagrams were not. Therefore, Toad cannot be one of those. So far, we've narrowed down Toad's basis to the AA15, AA20 or AA21 diagram. Looking closer, the AA15 design can be ruled out, as Toad does not have spoked wheels and his buffer shape is of a later design. AA20 and AA21s can be identified by their footboard heights. As Toad has the lower footboard height of later models, he can be identified as an AA21 diagram Toad. Okay, so Toad is an AA21 design brake van. There were 100 of these built, comprising lot number 1370. The real running number of Toad would be between 17390 and 17489. Tracking down a definitive running number basis will be hard, but I'm hopeful my future work on Oliver and Isabel will be instructive here. Once I have those research projects published, I should be able to narrow down Toad's real basis more, as well as the depot he would have been assigned to. On close inspection, the newest high quality scans of Oliver the Western engine show Toad's number starting with a 5. This would not have been worn by an AA21 design, but could have been worn by an AA1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 13, 15 or 17. As with Duck and Oliver, this is likely a false number worn by the former Great Western stock. Just a quick aside here for the TV series model of Toad. He carries number 56831, which does start with the same number as his Railway series illustration, but in reality, this number would have belonged to an AA2 design Toad. The 16-ton decal is not correct for an AA2 design, as these were 9 tons heavier at 25 tons. The TV series model does have the correct central chimney that an AA2 brake van would have, but its other various features are something of a mismatch of various designs. So, what do we know so far about Toad's working life? Well, he was one of 100 AA21 designed Great Western Toads built in 1939 or 1940 as part of lot 1370 and would have worn a number between 17390 and 17489. He would have worn his depot name painted on his side in 5-inch high letters. This depot may have been in the West Country from the start of his working life, or he may have moved there later. Unlike the popular idea of Great Western brake livery, and indeed Toad's repainted livery in Oliver the Western engine, Toad would not have worn the large G and W painted on his sides. Early builds of Toad would have worn 25-inch high letters on their sides from 1904 until about 1921. Later builds, or early ones which had received a repaint, would have had 16-inch high GW lettering applied to their sides. This practice ended in around 1936 or 1937, when the height of the letters was reduced greatly to only 5 inches high. As Toad was built in 1939 or 1940, he would have been outfitted with these smaller letters. Funnily enough, his TV series model wears the correct letter height decals. It is possible, although I can only find one source for it at this time, that if Toad received a repaint between 1942 and 1949, the GW lettering would have been reduced further to only 3 inches high. As with the larger GW lettering, Toad also missed out on carrying his weight on his side in italic letters. Rather than the more elegant design as seen here, he would have received the more basic weight layout reading of 20T, referring to his weight of 20 tons. Beneath Toad's depot, He would have worn a white S until 1943 to indicate he was vacuum fitted. Around this time, if Toad was used on specific duties, he may have been painted with R.U. standing for restricted user. Upon entering BR service, Toad would have been repainted bauxite, indicating he was vacuum fitted. All unfitted brake vans, including other Toads, were painted pale grey. He would have retained his GWR number, but it would now be prefixed by a W, as well as retaining his depot name and RU signage if he had it. Around 1952 he would have been labelled not in common use, which indicates the vans could not leave the western region. Toads were further restricted in 1960 to stay in their own districts or on their own local routes. In late 1965, Toads were banned from traffic use as brake vans. There is other lettering Toad may have worn on his side, although this could have been worn from his Great Western days or British Rail days. This lettering would read XP, WB 16 foot-0 inches, 20-0. We'll come back to XP in a moment as it's a bit complicated. WB means wheelbase and refers to the distance between the wheel axles. In Toad's case, this was 16 feet. The 20-0 refers to the tare, which is the weight of the vehicle when empty. With Toad, this is 20 tonnes. This information is not much use on brake vans, as they will not experience any recognisable change in weight when full, as their contents will only be a guard, but it was more important on wagons which could be filled. XP refers to four-wheeled stock with a wheelbase between 10 and 15 feet, indicating a vehicle was able to be used on express passenger trains. This would all be true of Toad apart from his wheelbase length, which exceeds the 10 to 15 feet restrictions. However, it still seems AA21s were labelled as such. One other feature of note is that Toad seems to have never gained rain strips. Most vans had received these by the time they were owned by British Railways, so this could be a useful tool in tracing down Toad. Right, so what comes next? I hope I've given a concise and complete overview of Toad's prototype and changes a van such as he would have gone through during their Great Western and British Railways life. Using my future research projects on Oliver and Isabel, I'll be able to identify his correct depot and hopefully even his likely running number. I hope this initial return to research video was of interest, but I'm sure the next videos I have planned will be on more exciting character prototypes. Keep an eye out for more Little Western research coming out soon, but for now, thanks for watching.